Hey Penny, why in the world did you get divorced? I was taken aback when my best friend called me out of the blue just to ask me that question. What are you talking about, Ellen? We never even talked about divorce, let alone actually go through with it, was my response. And in turn, my friend replied with a shocking revelation. I see, so that's why his attitude has changed so much for the worse. My friend's story made total sense to me, and it pieced together a lot of different things about my husband's strange behavior over the past few months. When I finally understood everything, I decided to bring the traitor to justice. What my husband did should never have been allowed to happen. This is the story of how a single act of selfishness cost a man literally everything: his job, his non-existent criminal record, and the ability to be trusted by other people, to name a few, and how karma did him the justice he deserved. My name is Penny, and I'm 50 years old. I work for a cosmetics company. Ever since I was an underdog in the company, I had poured my life and soul into my work, which is probably why I was promoted a lot faster than any of my colleagues. I was often designated as educator, in charge of training new employees every year, and my bosses and junior employees had lots of high hopes for me to bring the office to greater heights. It was honestly so nice to be loved by so many people, and the one who showed the most respect and sister-like affection was Haley. She was the most difficult person I have trained, by which I mean she took the longest time to get used to different kinds of work, but she was among the friendliest and talkative of underdogs that I've educated over the course of 20 years, and I loved her very much. Outside of work, we sometimes went together for lunch or a drive somewhere on weekends and holidays, and even my husband Rod said we were like sisters. Rod is my age and works for a local company in the business of architecture. I'll be honest with you, Rod isn't someone that's exactly good at his job, but ultimately, because of his years of experience in business, he had recently been promoted to section manager. He and I were classmates in high school, and we met again at a reunion after graduating from college. We hit it off and started seeing each other frequently, mainly because we lived near each other at the time. After dating for a year, we got married. Soon after tying the knot, we enjoyed our common hobby of camping to the fullest. It seemed, I'm pretty sure it was every weekend that we drove to this campsite and that. Occasionally, even camping out in the desert surrounding the city. During the day, it was definitely scorching, but at night, it was actually cold enough to need a fire, and I can't remember how many nights we stayed up from dusk until dawn, talking about this and that. Someday, when we have kids, I hope we can go camping like this, Rod, but together as a family.
Yes, I would love that too. Guess we'll have to buy a bigger tent then.
We used to talk a lot about the future, and we had such plans, but decades later, we still don't have any children. For some reason, we were found to be unable to have any, and we even tried fertility treatments, to no avail. I often thought of myself as the reason why we couldn't have any children at all, and I grew convinced I'd be ruined his life because of it. That's why apologizing to Rod out of the blue had become a habit for me. I'm so sorry, Rod.
Why are you apologizing, Penny? It's not your fault.
But you love children, don't you? You always smile whenever you see a father with their small son or daughter together in the park or something. You always hoped you'd have your own. And I denied you of that. I'm so sorry.
Oh, sweetie, don't worry about that. I love children, it's true, but I love spending time with you even more. So promise me you'll just stop apologizing and focus on enjoying our time together. Promise me?
My husband used to be so kind to me, so much so that I sometimes felt his kindness quite literally saved my life a few times. I decided to heed his words. Forget about the children we could never have and cherish our time together, just as he said. But fast forward 10 years, his attitude towards me had made a complete 180. It all started at around the time Rod was promoted to section chief. The changes were gradual, but very real. The first major of which was something he'd never done before in his life, working overtime. Believe me when I tell you that his worst nightmare was working extra hours. That was primarily why he chose his workplace. It was known for being very kind to its employees and never gave them any overtime work. He had always come home on time, and I felt a little uncomfortable. That he suddenly began to stay later at work more frequently, but I didn't think too much about it, assuming that he had made up his mind to try harder, now that he had been promoted to section chief. Rather, the most significant change for me was the coldness of his attitude towards me when I suggested, "Let's have a party at our house sometime to celebrate your promotion. I'm sure your mom and dad will be happy for you."
You don't have to do that. It's too much of a hassle.
You don't have to call it a hassle, honey. You've been acting a little strange lately. Did I do something? Or did something happen at the office?
It's nothing. Leave me alone.
Here's the thing. If he had that tone of voice, how could there be nothing going on with him? Maybe he didn't like the promotion he finally got, or maybe I did something wrong. No matter how much I thought about it, I could not come up with an answer. But while I was thinking about it every day, his overtime work kept on getting longer and longer. It got so bad that he eventually even gave up his days off to go to work. By this time, his attitude towards me was getting worse and worse. "Hey, you have to work on your days off. Is a section chief really that busy?"
Shut up. You wouldn't understand. I have my own problems to take care of, and I would appreciate it if you didn't pry into my affairs.
"I'm not prying. I'm just worried about you."
Worried about me, eh? Well, I didn't ask you to worry about me, and I'm so damn tired, so don't waste your time worrying about me, alright? You know, just by looking at you annoys me so much.
What's so wrong about worrying about each other as a couple? And to be annoyed just by seeing my face? That was going overboard for sure. I was hurt by Rod's words, but at the same time, I began to have suspicion about him. He was constantly carrying around his smartphone around that time, sometimes looking at the screen with a pleasant grin on his face and staying up late at night even though he claimed he was pretty tired. Let's back up a bit. Would a company that hasn't had any of their employees working overtime for decades suddenly require them to work overtime and on holidays? I wondered. I repeat the fact that the most suspicious thing about Rod was his attitude towards me. He's not a very good talker, so whenever he tried to cover something up, he takes on a high-handed attitude and tone of voice. I had no proof whatsoever of either side of the story. I had no proof to justify what he claimed, which was going to the office to work overtime. Nor did I have any proof about him doing anything wrong, and I was in agony. I was in the midst of this confused agony when sometime when I received a phone call from a friend of mine who worked at the town hall. Ellen is a great friend of mine and a very kind person who was always very considerate of other people, especially her friends. Even before I got married, she would willingly stay up late at the night to be on the phone with me, listening to my concerns and offering advice. I was so happy to receive a call from her after what seemed like forever that I hurried to pick up the phone and answer it. "Hi, Ellen. Long time no see. How are you doing?" "What are you doing talking like I don't know? Penny, why in the world did you get divorced? Rodney was here just now with another woman." "What? Where?" "What do you mean, what, where? Why didn't you say anything to me, honey? Are you alright? Is everything also doing alright?" I genuinely had no idea what she was talking about. "What are you talking about, Ellen? We never even talked about divorce, let alone actually go through with it. You must have had some kind of weird dream." "I wasn't dreaming, Penny." "Then you must have misunderstood." "Well, call me Christopher Columbus because I've discovered I'm blind." "No, Penny, everything's fine over here, and there's no way I could have mistaken you for someone else. Do you realize how many times we've met?" "I supposed I should take you for your word. Then what about the divorce?" "That's what I'm asking you. Rodney Goldberg just came to the city office hall to hand in divorce documents, and he was with a young woman." "Wait a minute, we never even talked about divorce, let alone actually go through with it." "Really? Are you sure?" "Really, really sure." "But after he filed the divorce papers, he filed the matrimony documents with her and left her looking pretty happy." According to my friend, my husband came to the city hall with a young woman, submitted the divorce documents, her clutching his arm, and immediately after that, filed the matrimony documents with her before leaving. I was confused at the time, but it finally made sense to me after all the strange things about Rod that I had noticed for a long time. I see, so that's why his attitude has changed so much for the worse. After listening to my story for some time, Ellen told me in a calm but serious voice, "Do you know the term forgery of sealed documents?" Forgery of what? Forgery of sealed documents. Listen carefully. Rod may end up in jail. What? There ain't no way. Then my friend explained to me very carefully and clearly, and I couldn't help but let myself be convinced. I couldn't believe that my husband might be federally punished for what he did. A sense of protection arose from within, and I wanted to question him right now to maybe help him escape his doom. But then my intuition scolded me for thinking like that. I decided to take Ellen's advice and hold off until I could consult a lawyer. He must have thought that my divorce was finalized and his marriage to the adulteress was consummated, never dreaming that what he did could land him in prison for quite a long time. When he came home, he was in an unusually better mood than usual. He had a sort of springiness to his stride, as though he'd just won the lottery, and he was humming a tune sounded pretty happy and upbeat. I had an instant for sympathy for him when he came home, but that sympathy disappeared when he acted as though nothing had happened. The next day, I consulted a lawyer whom Ellen introduced me to about this case. The lawyer told me that it was clear that Rod had forged a sealed private document, and what's more, that he would be convicted severely as far as the circumstances were concerned. We discussed the near future and how I should proceed with obtaining evidence to officially divorce him before he was caught. And the first thing I did after leaving the lawyer's office was going to a detective agency to hire them to investigate Rod and whether or not he was having an affair. I was informed of the results of the investigation a couple of days later, and it was clear that he really was having an affair. All the extra hours of work he claimed he was doing, along with working on holidays, was all a huge lie, and what he was really doing was meeting the woman who he was having an affair with. The result of the investigation was not a surprise by this point, but when it came to the identity of the woman whom he was cheating on me with, my eyes opened wide as my jaw dropped to the floor. The adulteress was none other than Miss Haley O'Shawn, the same Haley whom I'd become close friends with during the process of educating her of the ways of the office. I was genuinely shocked for multiple seconds, but then I remembered something that made everything fall into place. Haley used to ask me about my husband quite a lot. She also used to say all the time that she wanted to marry someone like Rod, and she asked me a lot about our marriage. Not only was I absolutely furious with my husband at this point, but also with my junior colleague. I vowed I would never forgive these traitors, and that they would pay handsomely for their stupid acts of selfishness. As the preparations were steadily being made and everything got in order, I told Rod that my in-laws were coming to visit us this weekend for the party celebrating his promotion.
I frickin' told you they didn't have to come, Penny.
Oh, come on now. I'm sure Don and Rosa would be happy to see us, and I know they would be proud of you. I think it would be nice to see them every once in a while, honey.
You're really gonna go the extra frickin' mile, aren't you?
Rod complained relentlessly, as I expected he would, but I didn't care about that anymore. He was mumbling to himself, perhaps talking shit about me and about his parents, until the big day arrived. He was undoubtedly pissed off about how he had been forced into this decision. On the day of the long-awaited party celebrating his promotion, when Rod saw who the guests were, it was obvious that his face had darkened a few shades. No wonder. It wasn't just my parents-in-law who were invited to this party. Haley was there, and so was Ellen, and so were a few of his colleagues, including his boss, who was among the kindest people I'd ever had the pleasure of meeting.
Hey, you didn't even prepare any frickin' food? You said you were going to throw a tiny-ass party, but this is a frickin' disgrace.
Disgrace? You're the one who's going to be disgraced now. All right, pipe down and behave yourself.
What the hell are you talking about? Have you lost your mind, bitch?
Let's see if you can go on insulting me after you have to listen to what I have planned to say in front of everyone.
The frick?
I put the divorce documents and the matrimony documents in front of a befuddled Rod.
Why the hell do you have these?
He was clearly upset. He glanced at my junior colleague, but she was continued to act oblivious and didn't make eye contact with him. I raised my voice loud enough so that anyone could hear. Why do I have these? That's not important right now, but this is your divorce decree, isn't it? I don't remember talking about divorce at all, let alone signing the very documents that finalized it. When did we get a divorce?
I don't know. That's just some documents with exactly the same name as yours, isn't it?
The divorce papers are right in front of him, but Rod still attempted to keep it under the radar, and the way he tries to cover it up all is so cliched. His cowardly attitude caused my friend Ellen to speak up. You don't know the severity of what you did, do you? I saw it myself. You and this woman came to the town hall together, where I work, filed the divorce and matrimony documents, and left giggling and cuddling. Rod glared at Ellen with murderous intent, but being a woman who knows no fear, she didn't seem to flinch at all. Haley was still silent and looking down, and my in-laws didn't seem to be defending him. Sensing that there was no way to get away with what was being accused of him, Rod made a complete 180 and aggressively confessed everything he'd done.
That's frickin' right. I wrote all the divorce documents, including Penny's section to fill in. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to get a divorce from this old hag and marry the young and beautiful Haley.
Old hag?
Don't you frickin' deny what is blatantly obvious. The young and beautiful are always better than the old and frail. Haley's beauty and energy are exactly why I decided to leave your bitch ass and marry her. What the hell is wrong with that?
You don't even know what's wrong, do you?
No, I do not. I don't understand at all. And anyone can prove I never did anything wrong. Hey, you, whore. Hurry the frick up and get your ass back to the city hall. And take those frickin' papers with you.
And now he has the audacity to lash out at my best friend? Yep, he was gonna get it. And he was gonna get it hard for sure. Now that Rod had seemingly flipped the tables in his favor, his girlfriend finally showed her true colors and burst out laughing like a fool. The two of you are a lost cause. It's a real shame. All right, fine. Since you don't seem to know anything, I'll tell you. What you did isn't just adultery.
Eh? What the hell are you talking about?
What you did is a federal crime. The act of you filing in an official document such as a file for divorce, which Saki is also supposed to fill in as you impersonate your significant other, is legitimate grounds for a crime called forgery of sealed documents. Looks like you'll have to spend some years in jail from now on.
There ain't no frickin' way, that's bullshit.
I'm sure the judge will tell you if that's bullshit or not. When my husband heard what Ellen said so clearly, so much so that even a kindergartner would have understood what the crime was, he was mortified. He obviously had no idea that his selfishness would lead to his being incarcerated, but there was a twinkle in his eyes that suggested he was hopeful we were just toying with him. But when he saw his own mother break down in tears, he realized that what Ellen was saying was not a lie. The rest of the guests were as silent as the dead, and I felt the air inside the house drop a couple dozen degrees. Is that breath I could see? I knew there was nothing more I could say that would get through his blockhead, but I proceeded with my discourse in a calm manner. With what being said, I'm going to make sure that I claim alimony against you two traitors.
Wait a minute, please, give me a break. I'm not divorcing you, please.
I couldn't help but laugh about how pathetic he looked and sounded. Oh my God, don't even make me laugh. You won't divorce me. Even with all the evidence I have against you, will call me Old Jolly MacDonald, because if this isn't my lucky day, Lake Ontario is filled with ranch and nacho cheese. You think you have the right to say that load of bullshit? Could you stop with being so pathetic? The fact that I was being so quietly angry probably rendered him unable to say anything else. Let's end the party for today. My in-laws, who had been listening to my discourse the whole time without saying a word, dragged their now catatonic son and went to the police. As a matter of fact, I had told them about what their son had did a few hours before the party. and they themselves offered to take him to the police. All three of them disappeared from the house. Haley, my junior, went on making a bunch of pathetic excuses as to why she did what she did. She said that she was jealous of me and my happiness, and that the marriage documents were merely a joke, but there was no way she could get away with such lies. I firmly told her that I would only discuss this matter with her through my lawyer. Rod was later tried on grounds for forgery of sealed documents, and his final sentence at the trial was very severe. 3 years and 7 months in prison without probation. It was very clear to the jury that his actions were very selfish and malicious. He will have to spend many years atoning for his crime, and he obviously won't be able to get his old life back. That being said, the last thing I'm going to do is to reach out to him directly for negotiating the legal affairs regarding the alimony he owed me. Through my lawyer, I finalized an official divorce with my husband and have filed for alimony. The alimony itself was a difficult matter to settle since he wouldn't be able to pay it until he served his 43 months in prison. But then my in-laws stepped in and offered to pay it on their son's behalf because they wanted me to be free of the nightmare as soon as possible. They were so kind as to put themselves on the line for my sake, and with a heavy heart I asked them to oblige, and oblige they did, because a few days later I received a lump sum of alimony from a deposit in Don's name. However, this isn't to say my in-laws had the intention of forgiving their son. Of course, Rod's boss fired him from his job, so they said that they would find him a day job or whatever was available after he got out of prison to pay them back. There was no doubt that life would be tough for Rod after he got out of prison. Not having to repay his parents for the damage he had caused was going to take a toll on him. The relationship between Haley and Rod obviously ended, and she was never charged with a crime because she claimed she knew nothing about the forgery of the divorce documents. However, as I had promised, I demanded alimony from her as well. It wasn't an amount she couldn't afford, but after this incident, she wasn't bold enough to work for me anymore, so she submitted her resignation. That was a big change in her life, because she now finds herself unemployed, in need of a good job. The last news that I know is that a colleague saw Haley walk into what appeared to be some kind of broth. I personally don't feel sorry for them whatsoever. What they got was the adequate consequences of such selfishness, and all I can say as a moral message to everyone listening is to always consider what your actions could bring about yourself. And for others, we all go through adulthood and we expect everyone to act responsibly. For society, depends on good human beings to follow their conscience and do they believe is right. As for me, I got my alimony from the 2 traders, and I'm now living a good post-divorce life. My work is as performant as ever, and I'm working my best to train good new employees to help the branch's performance grow even more. And as for my personal life, I was thinking that remarriage was off the table for the time being, but I actually met a wonderful person while camping with a few friends one weekend, and we are now camping friends. I'm in a better mood than I've been in more than a decade now. That all my doubts are gone, and I'm going to do what I can to live a fully happy life.